Belatti, you are an experienced public figure, experienced politician here. When you become lieutenant governor, what will be your first three priorities?
Thank you, Sam and Marlene. And just first, thank you for having me here. It really is a pleasure to join the Indivisible Hawaii Network because you guys have been on this journey with me actually from the very beginning in September. I think the top three priorities that I'm going to be focusing on, it's no surprise. Affordability for the people of Hawaii is number one, and how we tackle the many cost drivers that raise the cost of living for the people of Hawaii is going to be a top priority for me. The second thing that's really important to me is being able to strengthen our democracy and protect Hawaii, what makes Hawaii special from federal overreach. So it's continuing to make sure that Hawaii values and Hawaii laws that protect our communities are enforced and articulated in as strong and clear a way as possible. It also means looking at ways that we fill the gap in this time when we see the federal government pulling back on so many things that are important to Hawaii, so many DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion efforts on the Hawaiian programs that are being slashed and burned. We have to, as a state government, make sure that those gaps are filled. Finally, I think one of the things that has really driven me in the last year is the work done with good government. And actually the work done here with the Indivisible Hawaii Network. The passage of Act 11 was critical and really a part of one of the reasons why I decided to make the switch to the lieutenant governor's race. Campaign finance reform has been a priority of mine since before I was elected. Actually, when I was a mere citizen, like so many people here, and I was appointed by then Governor Cayetano to be the youngest campaign spending commissioner in the state of Hawaii. That was the breeding grounds for me that led me to really believe in campaign finance reform that keeps money out of politics and puts people before profits. We have come a long way since that time when I was a campaign spending commissioner, and we were seeing the effects of Buckley v. Vallejo and then Citizens United. So this is a full circle moment for me. I really am about good government, and I'm really excited that if I am elected to be lieutenant governor, that good government principles, which I think has been something that many of my colleagues are committed to, but we need to reaffirm that commitment. And I'm going to bring some of those things that I did as the co-convener of the Good Government Caucus in the legislature to my role as lieutenant governor. So I'm very excited by all three of those priorities.
Great. Okay, so my turn?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Della, since you mentioned your record and your long history with the legislature, can you tell us, give us an example of where you provided leadership on an issue, or that you stood up for something you truly believed in, and were you successful? And if not, in hindsight, what do you think you should have done differently? Does that make sense?
That does. Actually, let me give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
For one, I think one really important example of where I was successful was when I returned as a health committee chair and we had to respond to the Dobbs decision. There, I was successful to help navigate and move Hawaii's response to protect women's access to reproductive health care towards passage within one session of a very strong bill that in fact protected women's rights. Now, in that process, because we are predominantly Democratic, right? Navigating that through the system took a lot of skills, because even within our big tent party, we have to take into consideration a lot of things. And so for that reason, that was luckily a one session effort. Another example I would share with you for, again, many of those folks here at Indivisible Hawaii was medical aid in dying. Medical aid in dying has been something, death with dignity has been something that actually was being fought over when I first was elected to office in 2006. And there were many examples of where we as a legislature would struggle and grapple with that issue. When I was a young legislator, we did not move that, and I was disappointed with that. I was hoping that we could get it further. But I think what that taught me was that you have to keep being persistent. And then eventually, when I was a health chair and we were able to move that bill along, again, it was a 2-year effort. And I would say in that first year, we had to really listen to a lot of people who had a lot of concerns with death with dignity. We had to listen to religious groups. We had to listen to individuals. We had to listen to healthcare providers. And I can remember in that session when I just knew that we did not have the votes, that it wasn't something we were going to pass. And that's a hard thing to do when you're working with advocates. So I held the hearing. We let all the voices come to the table, and through the testimony process, we were able to gain that. And in a very open meeting, I allowed the conversation to happen amongst members about what they thought, and that what my inclination was in fact to defer the bill because we were not ready. And I will share this story with your audience. That was one of the toughest decisions because I personally believed that we could craft a law that would make sense. And I can remember that very day sitting with advocates in my room, and they were crying. And that's one of the toughest things as a lawmaker to do. When you see people who have put their heart and soul into a bill, and they believe that it's doable. And so I took that interim. What I learned from that was I said, democracy is a work in progress. We have to keep educating and learning. And I took that interim, during that interim, to go to other states, to talk with networks, to look at what forms were being used, to look at what other hospitals were doing, what other doctors were doing, what other large insurance networks were doing. We brought all of that information back to Hawaii. We convened an informal working group. We worked up legislation. And in the second year, we passed the bill. But it took that kind of work, that kind of rolling up your sleeves, and that kind of walking people through disappointment, because democracy, again, is not something that we win on the first try all the time. There are things that we do that are 10 years in the making. And so that's what I've learned over time, so that we can turn failures into successes. And in the meantime, build up a stronger network. Build up a stronger community. Because of that interim work, one of the things that we were able to do was we were able to talk to the providers here. We were able to talk to the hospitals to see what they needed. We were able to identify gaps in the palliative care system where we could also supplement so that people could make full informed decisions and have the kind of end-of-life care that everyone deserves in the state of Hawaii. So I'm really proud of that moment, but that's an example of turning a failure into a success. And that takes work. That takes working with people even through their disappointment and tears. And I'll share with you, I had some tears on that moment when we lost the bill. And I said, look, we're going to come back. And we did. So I'm very happy about that story.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Representative Belatti, you talked about your work on the Good Government Caucus, which certainly we applaud, and getting Act 11 across the finish line. How are you funding your campaign for Lieutenant Governor? And are you committing to accept financial support only from transparent sources and to refuse to benefit from any dark money, including in-kind support, any super PACs that come in, quote, as independent expenditure organizations? Are you, as a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, saying transparent money only?
I am committed to not accepting corporate PAC money, which for me is defined as those dark money sources. I am, and corporate PAC money, largely from private corporations, for-profit corporations. I am going to be accepting union PAC monies if I'm, and the reason is because union PAC monies typically are from individual human beings, individual members. So I will be accepting that. I will also be accepting PAC money from principled, what I would call ideological PACs, so those are groups like Emily's List or Planned Parenthood, Sierra Club, like those are groups whose values align with my values. And so I will be accepting monies from those. That's my stance. I really believe that this is got to be about people. My campaign is a people-powered campaign. I am in the midst right now of raising $38,000 in small dollar donors. What that means is donations from people who are making $100 and less, because we want to make sure that it's small voices that are amplified. This is a program that then allows me to access matching public funds. And for me, for those of you who follow campaign finance reform, fully financed clean elections, some say, are the reform of all reforms. But that is a very difficult reform to achieve. And so we don't have that. We have partial public financing here in the state of Hawaii. So I will take advantage of that. And if I'm so lucky, if I'm able to raise the $50,000 of small dollar donations that are required, I will be hopefully accessing that money to be able to counter what I know is going to be a race that is going to be funded in large part by monies from super PACs.
Yeah, speaking of, dark money, public corruption, transparency, that sort of thing. I've heard you speak about the $35,000 in a paper bag, and wanting to have a committee in the legislature to investigate. That's obviously didn't happen this session, and who knows now. But what have you done in your prior career? And it just also, if you were to be, well, if and when you get elected as lieutenant governor, what will happen to your private legal practice?
In my view, being lieutenant governor is a full-time job. So I will have to give up my legal career at this point in time. I enjoy the life and the career I've had as a lawyer. I have had the wonderful opportunity actually to run trials, to write briefs for the Hawaii Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit Court, as well as the Supreme Court of the United States. So I am very satisfied that my 19-year legal career has been full. And if I am not able to become lieutenant governor, I also have that opportunity to continue my legal career. And so I feel very blessed. But yes, I view being lieutenant governor as being a full-time job. And that's my commitment. The people of Hawaii will get Della Belatti for lieutenant governor for 100% of my time.
Okay. Great.
Sounds good. Now, what do you see as we've been talking about your views on issues. Let's flip it and look internally. What do you see as your campaign strategy and your path to winning this primary?
This is about winning votes on every island. And that is no surprise and should be no surprise to everyone. Since announcing, I've already been to Hawaii Island, the Kona side. I will be going to Hawaii Island again, Hilo side, this coming weekend. My plan is to go to Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Kauai. I'm especially excited about going to Lanai, and I keep talking about it because one of my mentors is from there. And I am going to chase every vote. And that really matters to me because another part of my campaign strategy has been to be talking to everyday people. And the way you have to do that is you have to show up and be present and listen and really actually engage, not just show up, take a photo and leave. I'm going to be engaging just as I've done on this island, at as many events as I can. And I am planning to do as much traveling as I can.
Okay, so just to play a little devil's advocate here, that's a lot of, flying back and forth. And so just that thinking about the impact of all that on the environment, right? On climate. What did you do and do you plan to do to protect the environment? And if again, if and when you're elected to be LG, what positive action do you plan to take to mitigate the climate change that's, I mean, clearly from the Kona lows, etc., we know we're already being affected. So what plans do you have to address that?
So I think if you again look at my record for 20 years, I have been part of coalitions that have pushed for aggressive renewable energy goals. I will continue to do that. I will also continue to push for emergency preparedness and making sure that our communities are prepared for the climate disasters that we know that are coming. In my last 2 years, I have worked very, very closely as chair of the Committee for Public Safety, which has as one of its really main responsibilities disaster preparedness. So I think it's really about working with communities to ensure that we have the mitigation and the preparation in place to deal with climate disasters. That is actually a huge priority, and that's one of the reasons why I think one of the reasons why that I want to travel to the neighbor islands, because resiliency on the neighbor islands looks very different from resiliency in urban Honolulu. And I think a good lieutenant governor has to know the diversity of our place, of the places that we represent. And so I'm going to be making sure that every voice throughout our state, every community throughout our state has the kind of resources that it needs. Now, in terms of other things like pushing on renewable energy, making sure that we have good jobs that are also connected to an energy resilient economic industry is very important. And so we're going to have to be asking tough questions about the mix of LNG and solar and wave and all of those other energy sources, because, we still have to meet our goals to be 100% renewable. That goal is still out there, and we have not yet achieved that. So I'm committed to working on that. And finally, I think one thing I will say, I have been watching very closely the litigation by the young students who took on the oil companies. We're going to have to look at that. And we also are going to have to hold ourselves accountable, right, to the settlement that Governor Josh Green agreed to put part of that litigation to rest, which means we have to make sure agencies like the Department of Transportation have the funding they need and the staffing they need to be able to put forward the plans and execute the plans to make sure that we respond to the Nawahini litigation and fulfill the promises we made to those youth who, brave souls that they were, sued the state. So good to them that they sued us to make sure that we're held accountable.
Right.
Good.
Okay.
So, Della, I think the first thing you said when I asked you about your top 3 priorities was affordability. I'd like to dive a little deeper on that. So in particular, in your legislative career, can you tell us what you have done to make, I think I should say, Hawaii less unaffordable? And as lieutenant governor, how will you tackle this? And, the affordability issues here are pretty clear. They're issues, you talked about the federal shortfall, but we still have the housing issues, permitting problems for housing. There were the shortfalls in federal support for Keiki and Kapuna, but we still see, for example, on Hawaiʻi Island, I think it's 24% of the population depends on food support. So please, double click on affordability. What are you going to do specifically?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Sam. First of all, I was part of, when I was majority leader, I was part of a leadership team that invested large cash amounts at that time, historic amounts into things like the dwelling unit revolving fund to make sure that we had in the pipeline the money so that we could build out affordable housing and affordable rentals. We also enacted and started to build out transit-oriented development laws, as well as home ownership assistance. Some of these investments were actually made at a time when we were going through the pandemic, if people can remember that far. And so those are the kinds of efforts that I have been a part of to make sure that housing was affordable. One other thing I would also point out to is during the pandemic is that I worked with then Housing Chair Nadine Nakamura and Vice Chair Troy Hashimoto, who is now in the Senate, to develop a program that tapped federal resources where we drew down the most rental assistance in the nation. We were the best state in the nation to be able to draw down on those funds and keep people housed. The reason we were able to do that was that I shared with both then Representatives Hashimoto and Nakamura my networks through Access to Justice. And it was about building up a program that involved the judiciary, landlords, tenants, and the whole spectrum of people who are involved in landlord-tenant issues to make sure that we as a state could draw down on that kind of rental assistance. I mentioned that because that's a really great example, again, of all the other things that we did, but another area where we need to explore what could rental assistance look like in the state of Hawaii, because we know there are so many renters here in Hawaii. And so how do we get relief to them? That would be something that I would be very interested to follow up on as Lieutenant Governor. So on housing and affordability, we as legislators have actually crafted a lot of laws already that help on some of these big issues. I will say that, again, working with then Finance Chair Sylvia Luke towards the end of the pandemic, we constructed the law that allows for us to make sure that every community in this state has early childcare, early preschool seats in every community. And so one of the other things I hope to do is to continue the good work of Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke in pushing forward Ready Keiki. And what that means is being innovative and looking at places where we can, in fact, have early childcare classrooms and seats put into many communities, particularly in actually rural parts of Oahu, because that is another huge cost driver for families, young families, working families, and it hits all kinds of families. And so that's one affordability area that I hope to continue. Finally, in your chat, I see someone asking about whether or not I would be supportive of, reducing taxes on food, because we're one of the few states that do tax food. I think we need to have that conversation about food affordability and looking at ways if we are able to, give more relief to working families in those areas. I would be very open to that and exploring those kinds of conversations.
I just want to one follow up on this. So thank you for picking up the tax on food question. You didn't mention the housing supply. Any thoughts on improving housing supply to make more reasonable rental property available? So
yes, we need to work on that. And then this is where I think, some of the work that Governor Green has done is very good and where I would be very supportive. Also, the work of my legislative colleagues like Representative Gregor Ilagan, who has been pushing on, speeding up the regulatory process that will then, in fact, speed up the supply inventory. And yes, so all of those things I would be certainly continuing to be supportive of. Again, I think this is also something where we have to work with our federal delegation with, because they also have the ability to invest in infrastructure in ways that sometimes the state government cannot do. And so we have to both coordinate regulatory fixes at the county levels and then look at funding to the federal government so that we can do the large infrastructure and then therefore help the developers make sure that they can keep the costs low or at least reasonable, so that all of those kinds of costs do not get passed on to the first-time home buyer. And so that takes a lot of coordination and intergovernmental work, which I think I can bring to the table with my years of experience as House Majority Leader and being able to work across cross levels of government.
Yeah. So, do we have time for?
Yes, keep going, Marlene.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, in terms of affordability, I mean, certainly, yeah, there are things that can be done, but wages, income levels is another big factor, right? When you're lieutenant governor, how do you propose to ensure that Hawaiʻi residents will have access to living wage jobs with full rights and the right to unionize? I mean, that's sort of guaranteed, right? But what any specific actions you have in mind?
Well, first of all, nothing is guaranteed. We always have to make sure that we're supporting unions and not become like a right to work state. I think one of the things that we need to do is make sure that, in most recent years, right, we understand that there's probably more wage theft that's occurring now, and that workers are now coming forward and understanding their rights better. And so I think we have to encourage both greater education amongst workers to know their rights, as well as employers to abide by those rights and make sure that workers are being given their fair due and their fair benefits. On the flip side, I also think we have to focus on making sure that there are good jobs available. And so that's talking about education and the pipeline of the P20 spectrum of education, right? And so I have long been a proponent of making sure that we have career ladders that people of Hawaiʻi can walk up so that they can, I'm most familiar with healthcare, where we have things like certified nursing assistants programs and making sure people can access those kind of workforce development programs in the community colleges. But then they should be able to then access becoming a nurse, becoming a fully registered nurse, or becoming even a licensed practical nurse, an APRN,
practitioner,
a practitioner, right?
Right,
and so
right.
actually that does two things. That makes sure that people of Hawaiʻi, students, have access to the educational resources that they can get higher paying quality jobs. And then that addresses some dire needs in our community, right? If we can grow at home our own doctors, our own healthcare professionals, where there's a wide range of healthcare professionals that we need, we address the workforce shortage that we have here. We can also support programs that are not simply your 4-year college degree, graduate level degree programs. We need to be aggressive in supporting apprenticeship programs and programs that put people through the trades. Because I think one of the things that we're going to see is that those kinds of jobs have always been well-paying jobs. We're going to need more of those jobs here. We're seeing workforce shortage across industries. And so we need to make sure that those apprenticeship programs are also fully staffed and resourced at the community colleges and at all places. And we have to partner. We have to partner with our unions, because they're the ones who offer the job training and the instructors, to make sure that, their bench is full, and that when we need the workers to build the affordable housing we need, we're not having to go offshore and import people. We will grow our own here. And those are the middle class jobs that we need to grow, because that's what makes our economy stronger. And so I will work towards all of that.
Great. Can I just follow up with kind of a combination of my last two questions? So I don't have the exact percentage, but some large number of jobs in our state are tourism related, right? Hospitality types of jobs. How would you balance, keeping those jobs, but also protecting our environment? And I mean, I think we've started doing that with more sort of education for visitors to the state. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think what you're talking about, Marlene, is how do we make sure that tourism is a sustainable and not simply an extractive industry in our community? And I think we're seeing really
Right.
good efforts at that. In fact, when I was out visiting the Kona Indivisible crowd this past weekend, Kahalu Beach is a wonderful example of how you make sure tourism is sustainable and not extractive, and it builds upon community stakeholders and resources. Out in Kahalu, there's this wonderful project where businesses and volunteers and just community people have basically created an area that protects and educates and grows monies and resources for the protection of that. Is it Kahalu Bay, Sam, or
Yes,
Kahalu Beach Park?
Kahaluu, yes.
And I was sitting there while I was waiting to get ready for the potluck, and I was just watching the volunteers and how they were interacting with tourists. And there was a woman from San Diego who approached one of the tourists and said, "This is so wonderful that you're here. You're teaching us about how to access and how to get into the reef properly. You're giving us sunscreen that's not that's safe for the reef. We need to do this in San Diego." And I was just so like struck by that because there are so many examples of like that. When people come to Hawaii, they're like, "Wow, this is what you guys are doing in Hawaii? Like, we need to be doing this over there." It goes the same way for Act 11. Wow, you guys, this little state figured it out. They're going to take the risk. We got to do that. And so that's one of the things I'm most proud about being from Hawaii. We are figuring out sustainable tourism. Do we have a lot more to do? Yes. But I think that's a conversation that we need to have with again, our industry partners who are moving towards more sustainable practices within the hotels. And then we have to talk about how we can make tourism integrate with the community so that the people of Hawaii aren't feeling like they're being crowded out by tourists. How do we make it sustainable and something that we all are happy with and we can all live with? I think that's all the things we need to do. And so I just look to that example of Kahalu. I look to Auntie Cindy. I can't wait to come out there and talk to her again because what Auntie Cindy is doing, they're trying to replicate on the North Shore on the island of Oahu. And then we can go replicate it. Parts of it is already being done at Haena with the good work of Representative Speaker Nadine Nakamura and the community out there. We have so many good examples of how we can make tourism sustainable. We have a ways to go, but that's certainly something that I would help push forward wholeheartedly.
Great. Yes.
I
Thanks.
have a specific request for that, and then I'm going to go to audience questions. Something I would love to have you make happen as Lieutenant Governor is that we get educational videos on the airplanes coming to Hawaii to educate the tourists about sustainability.
So I want to tell you, I think they do that already. They maybe need to do more of it, but they do some of it already, Sam. I will say
they
do
hand out the forms and you have to fill in the tourist form and what have you, but there's not education like how to protect the reef,
I see what you're
protecting
saying.
the Aina and so
Yeah.
forth. And it would be because they already, do the compliance on the forms, it would be very easy to slip in video that educated it.
Right. Maybe that they have to watch the video before
Right,
they
right. Right.
can
Okay, so audience questions. We have attendee questions. All right. I'll try to read it. This is from Auntie Kate. How did you feel about not being endorsed by Indivisible for the candidacy to replace Ed Case? I personally felt your talk story for that office by far outperformed your opponent and was very disappointed in Indivisible's choice. I fervently hope you will succeed in your bid for Lieutenant Governor as you are eminently qualified. So the question in that was, how did you feel about not being endorsed by Indivisible in the CV1 primary?
Thank you, Auntie Kate, for that question. And I'll be honest, Sam and Marlene, it hurt, but I'm human. I'm also a big girl though, and so I understand the endorsement process. And I think at this point that's behind us. I think what we need to do is look forward. Now we have what I think is two very good races. And I think for me, as a former social studies American history teacher, I love history and government. I love democracy. I think there's a quote that says the best government by far is democracy, even though it sometimes seems like the worst form of government. I believe that entirely. And so what I want to do now is look at what we have in the present. I will work with anybody and everybody who wants to make Hawaii a better place. And so I want to put that behind us, and I want us to have a conversation about what is the Hawaii that we look like. I want to challenge my opponents in this lieutenant governor race. Let's talk. Let's debate. Let's go out into community and answer tough questions. Let's not run and hide. Let's not play this game of not showing up. Democracy dies when we stop engaging and we think that people can just walk into office. Democracy thrives when we have a debate, when we have ideas that can clash or that can support one another. And so I'm fully looking forward to this campaign, to engaging with anybody and everybody. And I'm so appreciative that Indivisible Hawaii, the door is still open. For me, politics is about, always having the door open, no matter what happens. And that's because it's our community, and we're fighting for a community where there's going to be differences, there's going to be dissent at times. But if we keep our eye on the prize, which is how do we make Hawaii a better place for all of us, we can overcome anything. And that's where I'm at now, Sam. So thank you, Auntie Kate, for that question.
I'm going to keep going on these unless you want to, Marlene.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so the next attendee question is from Linda. Nonprofits are under attack by the federal government. How will you work with our congressional team to ensure our 501c3 statuses are protected? I think this is a reference to things like NSPM 7, which directs the executive orders to direct the Treasury to pull 501c3 designations.
Right.
First of all, I think, as the state of Hawaii, we need to uphold and apply our laws for privacy and that protect any of the organizations within our state, including 501c3. So I don't think compliance or early compliance with any kind of executive order that has not been fully tested in the courts is something that we should do. That's one thing. I would urge, and I would certainly work with our congressional delegation to make sure that laws are crafted so not to weaponize federal programs against, important community stakeholders who we rely on. So much of healthcare delivery is being done by nonprofits. And so if they're forced to comply in ways that are outside of our own state laws, we need to work with our fellow delegations to make sure that those nonprofits are protected, and hopefully urge our congressional delegations to stay and hold the line on making sure that the federal government is not weaponized against the people or the groups in Hawaii that do the good work that we need done.
Okay. Tina's asking, you've been a legislature for 20 years. Was there anything during your tenure that caused you to change your mind on anything over the years? And if so, please elaborate.
I will tell this group one thing that I have absolutely changed my mind on. And again, you have to remember, I'm an American history teacher. So there was a time when we actually voted on the legislature, the popular vote. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but what that initiative is one person, one vote for the for the presidential election. And again, I'm a history teacher. The Electoral College, in one strain of thinking, protects small states. So I
Yes.
actually, and I'm not going to run away from this vote because I did vote. I didn't vote for the national popular vote, and that's a program that what that does is if there's enough states that agree to it, there's a compact, and then we will somehow change the constitution so that we will not have electoral college anymore. I didn't vote for that. Now, if I had the opportunity to vote for that bill, I would vote for it in a heartbeat because what we have seen is a presidential electoral system that is just completely warped the presidential elections. And so we need to go to a place where it's one person, one vote. I think um, when you look at countries across the globe, they don't understand our electoral college. It is such a throwback, and it is really rooted in this sense of three-fifths of a person, right? And so it's not something that we should do. We need to figure out a way to get rid of it. I still don't know that the national popular vote is a way to do it, but if I had a chance to vote on that bill again, I would certainly have voted for that bill. And that's where I really changed my mind. That's a big one that I really changed my mind on. That's not something that I would support the national popular vote now.
That's a good thing to change your mind on.
I have many former educators, teachers, colleagues, mentors of mine who were like, "What were you thinking?" And I said, "I didn't talk to you. You didn't talk to me when I made that vote." And I think it was sometime like in 2010-ish. So, it wasn't, it was a while ago. That vote was taken a while ago.
Got it. Yeah, we should bring it back up. Okay, here's a long one. This is from Thomas. Aloha, Representative. I'm a member of the DPH Health Committee. I think you're acquainted with some of our other members, Dr. Stephen Campbell, Melody Aduja, a few others. As I think you already know, we've developed solutions to deal with the ongoing healthcare crisis, as well as the coming federal cuts in Medicaid funding and other forms of federal support after the election in November. So I would like to know if you plan to promote this alternative healthcare plan, including, quote, deep privatizing Medicaid in Hawaii as part of a phased strategy moving toward what is known as, quote, all payer, aka a version of universal healthcare that, unlike single payer, is more flexible on the state level. So that's the question.
I would like us to have a conversation about how Hawaii can be part of the movement for healthcare for all, Medicare for all. Now, if that includes some of those proposals that Mr. Brant Thomas has identified, yes, let's have that conversation. I think we have a wonderful opportunity with the Rural Transformation Health Grant that the state has received from the federal CMS to be able to play out and make sure that we can plan out and probably phase out some of this movement towards a more accessible healthcare system. So to Thomas, I would say, yes, let's have that conversation and let's advance those efforts to transform healthcare. One of the reasons why I also say that we need to have a conversation is because one of the things that I'm hoping happens is that there truly is a blue wave in Congress, and you see and hear so many federal candidates now talking about healthcare for all, Medicare for all. Hawaii needs to be at that table when they are crafting any healthcare for all, Medicare for all plan, national plan for the United States and how it will affect Hawaii. I will want to use the Office of the Lieutenant Governor as a place where we can work with our congressional delegation to make sure that they are equipped with all the information that they need. And I know the delegation, Senator Schatz, has been so instrumental in developing telehealth policies. I know that Representative Congresswoman Jill Takuda has been doing great work in the Rural Healthcare Caucus. And so we have people who are positioned quite well to be part of the conversation of what healthcare for all looks like in Hawaii and in the nation, and then how it impacts Hawaii. And I want to use the Office of Lieutenant Governors to be able to be part of that conversation. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is like something that the Office of the Lieutenant Governor will be able to do is like reach out to stakeholders across the nation, to have conversations with lieutenant governors in other states. And that's the way I hope to build out and educate the wide range of industry groups that need to be educated about how special Hawaii is, so that as we develop healthcare for all, and I think it's coming, we're one of the fewest first world countries in the nation that don't have healthcare for all. It's coming, and so we need leaders positioned in all levels of government to be engaging and protecting Hawaii's interests. And so I'm very much want to be part of that conversation, Thomas. Thank you for that question.
So here's a question from James Raymond, who is a retired deputy AG. With Senator Kehokalole and Senator Rhodes not returning next session, who will lead, coordinate, and navigate any necessary or desirable amendments to Act 11?
I hope to be doing that as Lieutenant Governor. If I'm not elected as Lieutenant Governor, you better believe that I will be joining good government groups across the state and be advocating to make sure that Act 11, if and when it is amended in a way that makes and preserves that law. Look, I've already started to work with groups like the Center for American Progress to look at what is going to be needed, the concerns that are now being raised. And laws are meant to be amended, and they can be amended. We saw some very good amendments being offered in California before California's legislature decided not to move their bill. And so there are going to be amendments, and I'm going to miss dearly Senator Rhodes, because he is such a great thinker. You better believe we're going to tap into him. He's not going to be retired, or he can be retired. And Senator Rhodes, I'm making this as a shout out to you. We're going to call on him and his brain trust to be able to help us to think through what those amendments could be. But I'm already even not Lieutenant Governor, just as Della Belatti citizen. And as Della Belatti for state representative until November, you better believe that I am working and on the job to make sure that Act 11, when and if it's clarified, which it needs to be, it's done in a way that makes sure that that law remains good, not just for the state of Hawaii, but it is really about making it a strong law for the United States. It will be the first law that will be tested at the Supreme Court. My hope is that Montana will be successful, and from all accounts, I think their petition drive is going well. So what you're going to have now is going to be multiple laws going to the Supreme Court, and we have to make sure that every law is solid so that dark money does not infect our system.
Right. So we have two questions, one from Doug and one from Douglas, that are related. As Lieutenant Governor, what can you do to protect democracy in the Trump era? For example, Hawaii has a hybrid vote by mail and in person. Trump is assailing vote by mail. What can Hawaii do to defend the ballot, basically? And I'll give you the second question that's related as well. The current governor seems to have a tin ear when it comes to concerns of the majority of the people in the state. Worse, his administration rolls over to the Trump administration on every issue. Will you be a voice of the working people once you get into the executive chambers?
I will always be a voice for the working people, Sam. I was a voice for the working people when I first entered office, and you can better believe that I will not be quiet. I have learned, of course, to be diplomatic. I have learned to work across differences. I've learned to build coalitions, and I've learned when it's important to stand up and say something, even if I may be the only person in the room saying it. I say it with respect and with love, and then if the votes are not with me, it's going to ultimately be the governor's call. But I will not ever be afraid to raise a critical voice, especially when it's for the people of Hawaii. I will also say that I think part of the question was about compliance. No, we shouldn't comply. We should use every resource of the state government to make sure that our people are protected under our laws. When this immigration issue came up actually 2 sessions ago, I was the one in caucus asking the attorney generals, why are we complying? Our state constitution says this. Why are you advising us to not pass a law? And it took us through last interim, to seeing the escalation of ICE in other states, to see the death of citizens, of Pretty and Good. We saw them die. So no, we should never, ever comply. We need to defend our laws. And it was really good. Again, right? We lose some battles, you come back for the second session. And finally, we had an attorney general who was not agreeing with us completely, but we've passed a set of laws that reaffirm Hawaii's commitment to the civil rights of everybody, to due process rights of everybody in this state. And my hope is that Governor Green will sign those bills into law. He has not yet. And I certainly, if I were Lieutenant Governor now, would be telling him, why are you waiting? Go sign those bills. What are you waiting for? We need those bills now. We need those bills now to continue to protect people. On the election front, another good example of not complying early. We have to fight those executive orders because they are not law if they are challenged and struck down by a court. And we are seeing the federal judiciary beginning to push back on this administration. So I applaud then the efforts of the Attorney General and Attorney Generals across the who are fighting back. And so we have to continue that effort. And I was a full-hearted supporter of the money that we allocated to the Attorney General to be able to defend our laws. So those are the kinds of things I will always advocate for, and I will always be speaking up for the people. And I will join you in the streets when we have to protest to make sure that we have laws that protect the people of Hawaii. I will join the people then. Thank you for that question.
Great. From Stephen, how challenging is it to transition from a CD1 candidate where you can drive around the district easily to the lieutenant governor race where you have to campaign on all the islands? More signs and banners, more expensive, et cetera, hard to meet all the voters.
So a couple of things. When I was campaigning for CD1, I actually loved driving across CD1. And I know this might be like, people like hate traffic, but and I hate it too, and I can understand. Now I fully understand the traffic woes of the west side of Oahu. But I loved doing that drive. What I'm finding now is that yes, it's expensive, but it's worth the investment to be doing the travel across the islands. It's so important to show up, and that's what I'm going to do. In terms of like the expense of campaigning, one of the things I'm really proud of, and yesterday we had a fundraiser and my campaign manager explained it perfectly. We have been able to repurpose many of the signs. And so the signs and the things that we've been doing for CD1 has actually transitioned very nicely into a campaign for the statewide elections. And so we're doing it. I am paying attention to every dollar we're spending, but I'm also making sure that we do make the investments to make sure that I can travel and that we are then tapping into everything. I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything Reddit. You will see me a lot up on social media. You will see my volunteers phone banking to all parts of the state. And I have volunteers. It's so amazing, Sam. This is day 14. Day 14 since I announced. And we have people who are calling me saying, let me take banners to Maui. Can you mail us 20 signs to Kona? We're doing it all. And so I'm just appreciative for the people who are coming out and saying, let's be part of this campaign. I'm welcoming anybody. DM me at Della for Hawaii on Instagram, Facebook. Sign up for our volunteer list at dellabelatti.com. Someone will get in touch with you and we will build out this campaign.
Great. I'm conscious you have another event to get to, so I'll give you one more question that's been upvoted. Okay. From Peter, in the last 10 years, the Democratic Party has proven itself almost worthless on a national level. Out of touch, inept, and pusillanimous. There's a $10 word. What is the key to preventing this ball and chain of a party from dragging you down and doing worthwhile, brave things for ordinary people?
I am a member of the party, so I understand that we have a lot to do. We have a lot to account for. I promise and pledge that I will always work to advance working people. And if that means challenging stakeholders within our Big 10, I will do that. It's only a ball and chain if we make it a ball and chain. I think we have to challenge ourselves to do better. And what we are seeing is a conversation that's happening nationally. We are seeing a conversation happening here in the state. There are multiple primaries where there are really good candidates. And so the people of Hawaii now have a choice. And so I will be part of all of those conversations. It's been really fantastic to see the kinds of leaders emerging in my own district. There are 4 very well qualified candidates. And I think, you know, the more people step forward, that's how we change the party, Peter. And we're changing it. It's got to respond to the people who are emerging and who are calling for change. And I'll help that along.
Well, thank you very much, Della, for making time for us.
Yes.
We know you have to run, so we'll let you go to your evening event. And I will say to our attendees, you will get after this a survey about endorsement for the lieutenant governor race. This video will also be available as an on-demand recording through Saturday. And if you have friends who you think should watch and express their voices in the survey, please tell them about it. It's exactly the same registration link as you used to get here tonight. So thank you, Della. Thank you, Marlene, for
Yes.
joining us. Thank you, everyone who came.
Yes.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Representative. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Night.
Aloha.
Good night.